introduce yourself, say what you're running for, and then you answer this opening question. What do you think are the most important solutions at the federal level to address sea level rise and flooding? You're on.
My name is Nicolas, Kimaz. I'm running for U.S. Congress in District 22. I believe the issue of sea rising level is a big issue, but we don't understand it, and we're arguing about it. And we should take it more serious and decide how to fund a prevention fund, create a prevention fund, just like we have a disaster fund. Just this year, last year alone, the budget was over $130 billion for disaster fund, just to build right after the fact. So we could create a fund before the facts. It'd be cheaper, it'd take our time, and we could have a prevention fund where a serious problem like this problem, we could attack it right now before it happens, and we come up with ideas. It'll be much cheaper, and everyone will be involved in order to, on the federal level, because Florida is an important state for revenues and for the well-being of the Floridians. So it's easy to take care of this problem in terms of funding by creating a fund that is a prevention fund. At the same time, we have to tax the people who's causing this problem, which all of us. The agenda of how we created a catastrophic environment where using detergents in our homes, every home is responsible for the disaster of this environment, for the catastrophic results that we're creating ourselves. Just like we have taxed the cigarettes and alcohol, also we should tax the detergents that every home that use, so we could use less of it, and we could change the ways of the way we're polluting our environment. That's how we should take care of our issues, by first preventing. Prevention is the way to heal things. So by preventing and creating a fund for prevention and going at that, that's the way to take care of this. And again, tax the causes of these problems.
Okay. Next.
Hi, my name is Jeff Fande. I'm running for Florida's 22nd District as well as a Democrat. I have a background in IT and management, and one of the things that makes me a unique candidate for this particular opportunity is, as a project manager, I get to look at all sides of the picture and all sides of the equation and be able to provide an objective opinion and way to look at things throughout a lot of the projects that go on throughout our country and throughout our government. And one of the things with sea level rise, I see there's a lot of questions out there where some people are in denial, some people are in agreement, and I think my unique set of skills is going to be able to pull that together and be able to get everybody at the table so that we can get the right questions answered. When we look at the federal government, I think it was last year, we had actually removed climate change from a lot of the federal websites. It's a huge mistake when we're denying it, as the last group had said, burying your head in sand is no way to be able to get anything done around here. So at the federal level, the big thing that I want to do is be able to make sure that we bring science back to government. We need to be able to admit that we've got a climate change issue out there. It's not just, because winters are colder or summers are hotter. So many people try to simplify it too much, but climate change is a much, much bigger deal, and that's what's affecting sea level rise. Just today, there was an extension of the flood insurance program, I understand, until November, and there's concerns even then because we're running into November. The Congress that's in there today, one of the key members that's against this is not running again for re-election. So we'll all get kicked and get put into the new Congress and then move on into 2019 and still not get any traction. These are things that concern me because if this doesn't happen, it means that we're just not taking it serious at the federal level. And Florida being a very coastal state, we need to make sure that we address these things and get them done. One of the things that I tweeted about earlier this week was an article I found where the westerly winds in the Southern Ocean are basically causing a decrease in the carbon sink in the Southern Ocean, where we're losing about 40% of the carbon absorption. that's going to create major problems for us and for our climate change. We've already seen just this past week with Japan having temperatures of 106. Iran had a temperature last year of 129. This year, Africa has already had 124 last week. LA had 116. Siberia, 40 degrees above normal. We've got to make a change.
Good evening. My name is Eddison Walters, and I'm running for the United States Congress in District 22. I'm in the Republican Party. You know, about 47 years ago, my parents came to this country. And they came to this country because they believed in the principles of the American dream. They wanted me and my two brothers and sisters to have an opportunity at a better life. And today I have a sister who's the Assistant Attorney General of the United States Virgin Islands. My older brother is a SWAT team commander on the island of St. Croix in the United States Virgin Islands. My younger brother is over technology for the entire Broward health system. And I just completed my doctorate degree in global business. And so I'm telling you all of this because it was a small business that my parents opened that provided me and my brothers and sisters with an opportunity to achieve the American dream and obtain a college education that they didn't have for themselves. When you look around South Florida, small businesses is it. Small businesses is the life and blood of South Florida, and it keeps South Florida going. And I can tell you that there's not a single business in South Florida who wants to see that the environment isn't protected. I think from the federal level, we need to work together with businesses and to help protect businesses and find a common ground so we can invest in the infrastructure. We can bring communities and businesses together and focus on solving the problem. Because when we can argue about the things that we differ on, but if we focus on solving the problem, investing in the infrastructure, providing funding for long-term to address all the issues, I mean, we need to have the community come together and work for a solution. Washington, we can provide the funding, but I don't believe it is the place for Washington to mandate to the states the solutions to local problems. So we need the community to come together, both business and private individuals, to help solve the problem, focus on the problem.
Okay, Mr. Kimaz? Okay, the question is about the National Flood Insurance Program. I'm going to give them all 90 seconds because the flood insurance program is such a mess that I'm going to give them more time to expound on that. But the question here is, the program blocks the ability for an organized retreat as it requires people to rebuild in the same location. So how can the National Flood Insurance Program be addressed to ensure sea level rise is accounted for? And while you're at it, what do you think needs to be done with the flood insurance program to at least keep it solvent?
Well, you just learned that has been extended, the program. But here where the federal government and Congress can really put pressure on this program to help Floridian and each state that has the flooding issues. Just what we saw in Texas, we saw here, we've seen it in many different states. Congress can help force these insurance companies to create a program that will benefit us here Floridians. We need that program, and Congress here can come in place and force them to do that. In order to create a program that will help us, help the people who are affected most to be able to relocate, or if they want to rebuild, to be able to have the same enough money that they've lost through that disaster, through that catastrophic flood, to rebuild and be able also have even more to be able to reestablish themselves. And Congress here can come into play and create and force this program among the insurance companies.
Okay, next.
So regarding the flood insurance program, I'm not an expert in that area, but I wanted to come here to speak tonight because I think it's important, because it is very concerning to me as a Florida resident, as well as somebody running in Congress to represent everybody here. And I want to rely on you guys and the rest of the experts in the industry to be able to provide the right answers and the right solutions to this problem. It's one of the things I've realized as a project manager. I won't always be the best person to know the answers, but I am the one to find them. So that's what I want to make sure that when I get sent to Congress this season, I want to be able to represent you and be able to provide good solutions based on your input, your feedback, what the local level, what the state level needs, because that's what's most important. But then we also have to look at the federal side of things, where we've got 16 military bases up and down the East Coast that are flooding every year. I understand that within just a few short years, they're going to be suffering from potentially 100 floods per year. Of course, federal dollars are most likely to be able to be, or most likely to be put into those programs. So we have to be concerned about that, because that's money that's going to be taken away from Florida. And that's something that I see as a big concern for us, because we rely so much on that. So that's why I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate with that, to make sure that we realize where the federal government's headed. If I get sent to Washington this season, my plan is to make a difference and get that funding in place to protect all of Florida.
Thank you for the question. I believe from the federal level, what we can do is we can make the decision to invest in the infrastructure. You know, when we invest in infrastructure, the useful life of infrastructure is over a long period of time. Money that we spend today in infrastructure will yield dividends for many years to come. So what we need to do is we need to definitely invest in the infrastructure to solve the problem. Secondly, we need to shore up the flood insurance funding so we can provide homeowners with the opportunity to rebuild in disasters. Another thing that we can do is we can stop mandating from the federal level the guidelines and the stipulations for homeowners to rebuild. Because I think that, you know, the building agencies, the commissioners in specific areas are on the ground level, and they are better equipped to say whether or not you can build at that location or you need to move to a higher elevation. And so, you know, we need to stop the habit of mandating from the federal government and allow people at the local level to solve the problems for themselves.
Okay, Mr. Walters, you're first, coming back this way. The question is, in what ways do you believe sea level rise is related to human impact on the environment?
You know, we could spend all day arguing about what is causing sea level rise, but I'm a problem solver, and I like to focus on solving the problems. I mean, you know, too often we focus on the things that divides us, and we don't focus on the things that we have in common. I don't think there's anybody in business, I don't think there's any single individual who can deny that sea level rise is a problem. And so if we move the issue of what is causing it, whether it's global warming, off of the table and simply focus on solving the problem, I think that, you know, we can really put a plan together that address the issues of solving the problem. Like I said before, you know, we need to invest in the infrastructure that addresses the problem We need to invest in the drainage systems. We need to invest in the surge protection. We need to invest in the seawalls. We need to invest in higher elevated roads. I mean, we need to make the investment so we can protect our community, because we all have a stake in the community.
Okay, next, the question was, do you believe sea level rise is related to human activity on the environment?
Yes, I do believe that it is related to human activity, and I think we've proven that by so many different scientists across the globe. And one of the things that we have to realize and accept, we pulled out of the Paris Accord. We have a government right now that is out there that is denying climate change. As the gentleman before me was just saying here, we need to make that change, we need to invest in it, but with our current elected officials, we're just not seeing that, we're not getting that. So we need to make sure that we speak up and get our voice out there, because the human impact is having a huge impact on our environment, climate change, sea level rise. If you look at the numbers put out by this group here, we doubled the sea level rise in the last 15 years as opposed to the last 31 years. It's continuing to happen. We've seen it over and over again. We need to be able to come up with a solution now, but one of the big things from a federal level is we need to be able to work globally. We need to work with science from all over the world, because there's different parts of the world that are affected in different ways. We recently discovered over in Asia a huge hole where we have some of the banned products, aerosols, that are now affecting our ozone layer again. And this was just recently discovered by a satellite, I understand, that was turned up, and it was literally, they weren't even looking for this. So now we've got to work with our global partners to make sure that we can solve this, because it's not just a US problem, it's not just a Florida problem, it's a global issue. So yes, it is created by humans, and we need to be able to address it now.
I don't think it's created by human. This is nature. And nature have gone through changes since conception. The entire earth at one time was flooded. So what's happening right now is just nature going through its course. Now, are we affecting the environment through our way of life? Yes, we are. We are careless, and we have many different ways that we are using in our own daily lives to pollute the earth. But does this pollution cause sea level rising? I don't think so. And there's no proof of that whatsoever. All there is just, right, maybe there's some studies shows that there is a bit of sea level rising. Now, all this speculation, we've learned that to work at it and do some prevention. But to say that us humans are causing this is a bit out of line and crazy. God has his ways of creating this world and the way nature works. And this is part of the way things are. But we have a way, and we have our own, yes.
Okay. We have a new arrival. I guess it's Mr. Kaufman?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, very good. Introduce yourself, say where you're running, and then answer this basic question that everyone, so what can be done at the federal level, you think, that produce solutions for sea level rise and flooding?
So I'm Joe Kaufman. I'm running for U.S. Congress, District 23, as you know. This is my fourth time doing this. The last time I ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I'm running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. I had over 130,000 votes against her, and by far the largest vote percentage of any Republican who has ever run against Debbie. In fact, with the voter fraud and all that, even with the voter fraud, we did very well in the last election. This time around, I'm looking to be the winner in 2018. I'm married. I have a 5-year-old daughter. In my profession, I do counterterrorism research writing and lectures for a number of think tanks. I've assisted the FBI Homeland Security, Department of Defense in the shutdown of a number of terrorist charities, and a number of and helped in the imprisonment of different terror-related individuals. That's my private life outside of running for Congress. With regards to the sea level rise, yes, absolutely, there is sea level rise. Obviously, everybody knows that. But what to do about it? You know, it's a question that we have to look at in realistic terms. You know, when we start throwing around divisive terms like climate change and global warming, what happens is we wind up dividing the community between party lines. One party against another. The way to deal with that issue is in realistic ways, like creating new bays, creating new living shorelines, enhancing the infrastructure, for the buildings that are created in that area, creating seawalls to stop the flow of water, because we don't want flooding in South Florida. That's realistic. Now, as Congressman, I can tell you that any type of, because there's a lot of talk about changing infrastructure. You know, the Trump administration is talking a lot about changing infrastructure, and both the right and the left are on board. And so I can tell you, as Congressman from South Florida, that if there's any discussion about any bills regarding infrastructure, I'm going to make sure that the protection of South Florida regarding the sea level rise is part of the infrastructure plan. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kaufman, we'll start with you and come on down, all right? On this next question. You ready?
Sure, thanks.
Okay, do you think that clean energy and carbon capture technology are part of a long-term solution to sea level rise? And if so, what role should the government play in spurring technological innovation and adaptation?
Well, at home, because I mentioned about these divisive terms that we use, but again, we have to look at it level-headed, and excuse the pun, level, but we have to look at it in level-headed terms. We have to figure out ways in which we can have clean energy. So right now, I have to tell you, I'm very much in favor of going aggressive towards those fuels of today. However, I will be in Congress. One of my first priorities is to move towards those fuels of tomorrow, renewable fuels. And when we invest in the fuels of today, as Congressman, I'm going to demand that there's equal investment towards those fuels of tomorrow, towards solar panels, towards wind energy, and towards the new energies. It's very important for me to see that while we deal with fuels of today, for our children's and our children's children, we move into the fuels of tomorrow.
Okay?
Can you give me that question again?
The question is, do you think clean energy and carbon capture technology are part of the long-term solution to sea level rise? And if so, what role should government play in spurring technological innovation?
Yeah, I certainly believe that we need to invest in clean energy. I'm not going to go as far as to say that I believe it's the solution, but we've always been a country that have led the world in advancement in technology. And as we keep investing in technology, we're going to create more energy efficient and more energy efficient use and less carbon footprint. I believe that as renewable fuels and new technology is developed and they become more cost effective, we will naturally move away from carbon fuels. So I definitely believe that we need to invest in new technology, but I don't want to just throw money at trying to solve something that may not even be the solution. I mean, I believe in the free market, and when the technology becomes efficient, we will naturally move toward the more efficient technology. So I think on its own, advancement in technology will actually move us away from carbon fuels.
Next.
I believe the question was about clean energy and carbon capture technology.
Correct. And, should the government be involved in spurring innovation in those areas?
I do. I think it's very, very important for the government to be involved in that. One of the things that we saw with the amendments that were attempted to be passed last time around by FPNL was about the solar panels. And I understand that we had a lot of sneaky wording that was put into there basically to trick people into voting for something that would actually work against them, is what most people believe. We need to be able to stop that. One of the things, if I'm elected, is that we always want to put the people first, as I mentioned earlier. And right now, FPNL is the one that was trying to get themselves first. We're the sunshine state. We have so much sunlight here. We have so much opportunity. We should be exploding with solar panels, but we're not. So we need to be able to keep moving on that, provide federal incentives for that. And another thing that I see right now, our current administration has gone back to a 1970s economy, and they've gotten coal where they're trying to bring coal back. I mean, what are we thinking here? We've got to get a change out there. We've got to make a difference with this. Coal is not the technology of the future, it's the technology of the past. It's also caused so much harm and damage to the people that are affected by it with the dust and soot and everything like that. It causes so much problems with lungs. We need to make sure that we're investing in our people, that when they live in those environments where coal is all they know in that region, we need to be able to provide retraining programs and relocation programs to get those people the future and get them out of those dying industries that are causing so much damage to our environment and work towards the cleaner energies. Thank you.
And Mr. Kimaz, the final word here.
Many European countries have abandoned these programs after spending billions of dollars on green energy, and it did not work. We need to invest, and I believe that even our military and many companies are investing to find and discover the new technology that will take us to the new level, to the next level. That something works. We don't need just ideas that we keep throwing billions of dollars at it and it's just without return. In order to protect our environment, we have to have the technology that will work, and will work with our budget, and will work with the means that we're looking for, and can replace the current energy that we're using. Does energy affect the current energy? Is it affecting the sea level rising? Absolutely not. I don't think that, because that is a bigger issue. The rising sea level has nothing to do with energy. This is something that is going through nature. Nature is going through changes, and we have to respect that.
Okay, on that note, let's have a round